Hello all, Rick here again with a brief Starship lore video once more, this time looking into the Freedom class. The notable thing about this design is of course it being one of Starfleet's few single nacelle designs, and unfortunately we only ever see it in the background shots as wreckage. The Freedom class was created as a kit bash model for the wrecked fleet of Wolf 359, and the vessel was the USS Firebrand, created by Gregory Jean and his team. As with the ships of this era, the majority of the vessel was constructed from reused Galaxy-class components as well as Constellation parts, and some custom new segments bringing it all together. At a glance, it may look like the saucer is of Galaxy origin, but in fact only the single nacelle is. The neck and the prominent phaser cannons are drawn from the Constellation class, while the saucer was scratch-built, although the bridge module may indeed be from the Galaxy too. The vessel was then damaged and scuffed up before featuring as a wreck, so we never get to see how it looks when it was all shiny and new in the show, let alone anything about it. So, turning to the in-universe origin now, and yes, almost all of this is derived from books surrounding the shows. Back in the early 2360s, Starfleet was enjoying its era of uncontested exploration, development, and blissfully unaware of the threats the later century would bring. As a result, although they had been creating ever more powerful ships, such as the Galaxy class, there were still no actual battleships in Starfleet. The Andorians, however, continued to persist in arguing for vessels solely designed for combat, and had a major input in the emergence of this class. While not a combat-centric vessel, it was definitely more geared towards battle than exploration. The design was drawn up based on an earlier model, the Saladin-class destroyer, which itself was a combat variant of the Hermes class, and that was used as the starting point for the Freedom class at the Tellarite and Andorian shipyards. The technology derived from the long Galaxy-class project was folded into the new frame, so essentially it was to be a 24th century version of the Saladin class. The vessel's mission profile was to be patrol and engagements, reviving the destroyer classification, but it was equally capable of light survey and pathfinding missions. The vessel was 430 metres long, making it 115 metres tall and 263 wide, with a crew of 370. It was developed in the tail end of the Galaxy project and launched a year later in 2361 from the Imperial shipyards and Teleprime's consolidated fleet yards, with the prototype being the USS Freedom. The line would still see new launches into the 2380s era, but thanks to the ridiculous levels of internal structural reinforcement, it was expected to last until 2450. So I imagine it would be retired due to obsolescence before then, but hey, the Tellarites built things to last. The warp systems were pretty powerful but limited by the single nacelle design, much like its precursors. We don't have official schematics, but most fan-made ones that try to fit a warp core in place it horizontally. Its cruising speed was warp 6.9, but it could accelerate to small sprints at warp 9.2 with a very slow rate of turn. This high warp factor was not sustainable for even as long as other ships of the time, but the core could supply a lot of power. Additionally, at impulse speeds, the vessel was not that manoeuvrable either, considering it utilised veiled impulse engines with no visible outlet, or a minor one in some designs. This is because it used a subspace field generator in its neck pylons that created a sublight warp effect to push the vessel along. Another unusual trait for Starfleet, let it never be said that they don't try new things. Where it did shine, however, were its armaments. It was equipped with 2 phaser systems, in the same way that the Defiant class would be, but at the time this was the first ship to try this. One array was your standard Type 8 phaser strips, and the Freedom featured 8 of them dotted around the saucer, but it also featured a heavy phaser cannon below the saucer, in a similar fashion to the precursor Hermes variants. This unconventional phaser cannon was a long-range sniper rifle of a phaser, which makes up somewhat for its lack of agility. It also had 3 torpedo launchers, 2 fore and 1 aft, that were capable of multi-torpedo launching, and later versions were equipped with the payload of quantum torpedoes in 2379. It had a sizable shuttle bay, however located in a similar place to the Galaxy class, which held a large quantity of auxiliary craft. It also had a teeny tiny deflector dish. Look at that little boy. This ship saw use in the Dominion War, although we never see it, and apparently into the former Romulan neutral zone to protect convoys and refugees until 2385 when Starfleet withdrew. So, this vessel is what you get when the Andorians push for a vessel. The rest of the Federation wants to play around with experimental ideas like Subspace Impulse, and the Tellarites build it. I would say it occupies a particular role in Starfleet, but we already have good scouts and an excess of patrol vessels, although this does sort of predate them. I think it's more apt to say that this chimera of a ship sort of ended up making its own role in the fleet. It's really good at intercepting and blowing something up, as well as serving as another chance for Starfleet to test out a bunch of ideas that they had. Like most of the vessels that only get a passing inclusion, I'd love to see more of their capabilities, but that's unlikely because it's probable they got left behind in the aftermath of the Dominion War and a new wave of 6th generation technologies that the Federation embraced into the 25th century. So, until the next video, I've been Rick, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.